Let's add a new Swift file to our project, and we'll add it to the networking group. We'll name this Artwork Downloader. In here, we're going to subclass the operation class to create a unit of work that we can dispatch onto a background queue. So we'll call this class Artwork Downloader, and this is going to be a subclass of the operation class. The body of this class is actually really simple. All we need to do is provide an implementation for the main function. When the operation enters the ready state and is about to be executed, the operation queue runs the contents of the main function. So what do we want to do in here? We want to download album artwork and then assign it back to the album. So first, we need an album instance to work with. Every single album artwork download will be its own operation, so it's going to be an instance of this class for every single download. This way, they can independently run in the background and not interfere with one another. Since we need an album here to work with, let's add a stored property to hold on to the album and an init method. So album, and this way we can assign it self.album equal album. Now this is a subclass, so we need to call super.init. All of the implementation is going to sit inside this class's main function. Now, because an operation can be canceled, we need to make sure, before our logic is executed, that we check to see if the operation has been canceled. There's no point in doing work that doesn't need to be done. This seems silly, but we do have an immediate use case for canceling. We're not going to implement this, but think of a situation, for example, when the album list in our app loads, we're going to start downloading the album artwork immediately for each album. If the user immediately scrolls down the list, however, it makes no sense to continue downloading the artwork for albums that are now off screen. In such an event, we would go ahead and cancel the operation. If this happens fast enough that we cancel before any of the main logic starts, then we don't even want to start it. So the first thing we're going to do inside main is to check if this operation has been canceled, and we'll do that by saying if self.isCanceled. And then if the task is canceled, well, we don't need to do anything else. So we'll jump out of this function by calling return. So at this point, after this if statement, the task has not been canceled. So now we can get some work done. We want to download artwork associated with an album. And this information, where the artwork is encapsulated by the artwork URL property on the album instance. So let's create a URL out of it, since remember we stored it as a string. Say guard let URL equal URL string album.artwork URL. And if this doesn't work, well, no point doing any work in here again, so we'll return here as well. Next, we're going to use this URL to get the data from the server. Say let image data equal try data contents of URL, and we'll pass the URL through. When we first learned about networking, I said there was a wrong way to write networking code and proceeded to show you this line of code right here. So why am I using it now? The issue back then was that this line of code, which fetches data synchronously, was blocking the main thread and was causing issues. Since our operation here is going to be dispatched off in the background to a custom queue, we won't have any of those issues. Note that I'm also avoiding error handling here, but that's purely for the sake of expediency. You can handle the error here if you want to. Okay, so once this works, we now have some data. What do we do next? Our next step is to check that this data is valid, convert it to an image, and assign it back to the relevant property. At this point, however, right after the image is downloaded, there's still a chance that the user could scroll away on screen. So again, we'll check to see that the operation hasn't been canceled. If it has, we'll return. If it hasn't, then we'll keep going on with our logic. Now, to check that our data is valid, we're going to do something really simple. And we'll check if the data value actually contains data by inspecting the byte count on the instance. So that's essentially an array, so we'll say if image data.count is greater than 0, and we'll assume this means that, hey, our data is valid. To complete this implementation, we need to add two more stored properties to the album type. So the first is a variable property named artwork of optional type UIImage. So first, let me import UIKit. And then after the songs, I'll say var album or var artwork of type UIImage, and this is optional. We also need to model the state of the artwork download. Let's say we load the album list view controller, the table view controller, and immediately start downloading the album artwork for all the rows on screen. It works, we get the album artwork, and scroll down the list to the next segment. If we scroll back up, even though these cells are being reloaded again, we don't need to create a new operation to retrieve that image. We already have it. So in here, in the album.swift file, let's define a new type, an enum named album artwork state. The enum is going to model 3 possible values the artwork can be in. So we'll start off with a placeholder state, and that is its default state. We'll then say the artwork has been downloaded, and there's a chance it might fail, so we'll say case failed. When an album is initialized, we'll set the state to placeholder. So var artwork state is of type album artwork state dot placeholder. Only if, why is there an error here? There we go. So only if the album artwork state is in the placeholder state will we attempt to download artwork. If it is downloaded, we know we already have the artwork and can use it. If it has failed, then again we'll display the default image. So now that we've added these 2 properties, let's go back to the downloader. So here, if the image data constant actually contains data, we'll convert that to an image. So we'll say album.artwork, and we'll assign this back to the artwork property we just added. Equal UIImage. We'll need to import UIKit at the top to get that to work. And now we can use an initializer on UIImage that takes a data instance, and so we'll pass the image data through. Once this is done, we'll switch the state on the artwork on the album instance to say an album cover has been downloaded. So we'll say album.artworkState equal.downloaded. Now, if the image data constant here doesn't contain any data, so if this is false, then we can't create an album cover, and so in an else case, we'll indicate that the attempt failed. We'll say album.artworkState equal failed. Now that we have our operation defined, in the next video, let's see how we can use it.